People in other countries are rightfully upset about Chinese tourists cutting in line, spitting on sidewalks, shouting in public, littering, vandalizing like they own the place. You are gay? Weirdo. You shower in the morning? Normal people shower before they go to bed at night. Unfortunately, in China, respect isn't a priority.
G'day you mob, Pete here. Welcome to Aussie English. In this episode, I thought we would do something a little more interesting. So there are quite big cultural differences between mainland Chinese people and Western people and Australian people, obviously in particular. So I saw this video pop up. It answered a lot of questions for me. I have watched it once, but I thought I would react to it. It is from Huoshan on YouTube, and the video is called Why Mainland Chinese Lack Manners, the Cause of Chinese Tourists' Uncivil Actions When Traveling. So let's just get into it.
Hey friends, why do mainland Chinese have bad manners? When Chinese people travel abroad, a lot of them act like they're still in China. People in other countries are rightfully upset about Chinese tourists cutting in line, spitting on sidewalks, shouting in public, littering, vandalizing like they own the place.
It's funny to mention this because a lot of these characteristics aren't obviously unique to Chinese people. Australians do these sorts of things all the time, but there are certain times and places where they are expected or unexpected, and certain people, like spitting in public is one of those weird things I think that I've noticed. Chinese men will do that, and older men, and it's the kind of thing that you would see young kids do in Australia as a way of, I guess, sort of flouting the rules and being like, I don't care. When you see older people doing it, it's sort of like, what?
Some viewers warned me that I shouldn't talk smack about my people. Hey, I don't have tribal mindset. Tribal mindset. For example, in my mother's eyes, as long as it's her side of the family, they're always in the right. Whatever they do is considered moral correct.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That tribal mindset thing. There are definitely people in Australia who have that. You'll see that in a lot of criminal organizations, people who, I guess, associate with criminals or, carry out crimes themselves. It typically is one of those things where they'll protect their own, whether it's family, whatever they've done, they'll be like, screw everyone else, I'll protect them. I think if I committed a crime, my parents would probably be the first to dob me in if they found out about it. So it is one of those interesting things where culturally there may be those differences within Australian culture, but then also obviously, as she's saying, maybe a broader Chinese kind of characteristic or culture is that China is always right, the Chinese people are always the best, and they have that attitude that bleeds out when they move abroad or travel abroad.
I don't have that. I actually hate that kind of tribal mindset. It is what it is. Let's just be honest. If anyone calls me a traitor, you just proved you are weak.
It's one of those things too. I think Australia's becoming a little more like her mindset, where if I see people waving the Australian flag and it's not like at a sport or at the Olympics or something, it is one of those things where you're like, why? Why do you care? Who cares? Australia, who cares? Or if they have like the Southern Cross tattoo on them. Again, I'm not throwing shade at any of you guys. If you're proud to be Australian, that's one thing. But any of those people that are very like, Australia's the best, we shit on everyone else, we're amazing, blah, blah, blah. That attitude from me, and I think for a lot of other Australians, culturally is kind of a bit icky nowadays. That's a big point of friction between Americans and Australians. That whole America, land of the freedom, we're number one, everyone else sucks, America, America. That kind of attitude. If Australians are behaving that way, it does end up being one of those things where the average Aussie, I think, would be like, oh my God, just take me away from these people.
You don't have the courage to face some facts. Now back to Chinese tourists. Those uncivil actions make others uncomfortable. Many countries' businesses are like, we don't like Chinese people. We only like their money. That's sad. Many would say, well, there are 1.4 billion people in China. Of course, there are some bad apples. True. But why don't Indian people have that kind of reputation? They have 1.3 billion people too. Here's my take. All these behaviors can be traced back to the lack of respect for others within Chinese society as a whole. For example, you are gay? Weirdo. You shower in the morning? Normal people shower before they go to bed at night. You haven't joined the Chinese Communist Party. You'd better be hurry. Never attended college. Uneducated.
See, there's a lot of these things that do happen in Australia where you'll have this kind of class divide, for example, where I went to a private school and we definitely had that attitude growing up. We were always told by teachers, you're privileged, you're in a very good school, this school is better than everyone else, and you need to remember that, have that attitude. And a lot of other kids, especially kids from very wealthy families, my parents busted their butts to be able to send me to this school, but there were a lot of kids there who would show up in Ferraris, and they always had that attitude of just, we're better than everyone else, we're better than people at other schools, we're better than the other kids at this school. It was always just such a kind of gross attitude to have, but there are Australians who have that attitude.
You are gay?
The gay thing is really funny. I think we would have had that back in the day. There's still going to be elements of our society that look down on homosexuality or have an issue, especially religious elements. But by and large now, I think it is turning, the tide is turning culturally, where we're just like, do whatever you want. I don't care if it's not affecting me, it's not harming anyone else. Do whatever you want. It's your business. It's not my business. I don't think less of you for it. Do whatever you want.
You shower in the morning?
The showering in the morning thing, that is something that I grew up doing. That was something culturally, yeah, you get up in the morning, you have a shower, and then you go out and go to school or work or whatever. I think you would have a shower later if you were doing something like laboring, you know, like if you're a brickie or some sort of a tradie or you're playing sports or something where you're sweating, you go to the gym, you're going to shower after that. But typically I wouldn't shower just before going to bed, which is an interesting thing because you would think, yeah, I guess if you shower before going to bed, you're going to be clean in bed. But when you wake up in the morning, quite often, you know, you've sweated, you've been lying in the sheets the whole time and you feel probably a bit gross. So that's why I think Australians at least shower in the morning, or at least I do. I don't know. You'll have to let me know what you guys do. What's weird? Maybe we just have to shower in the morning and the evenings.
You haven't joined the Chinese Communist Party. You'd better be hurry.
The Communist Party thing is funny because obviously, yeah, it is a big thing in China to be at least seen as supporting the Communist Party. In Australia, I think the average person, if they see you and they're like, you've joined the Labor Party, the Liberal Party, the Greens Party, they would just be like, you wanker. Like, I think, unless there was a specific reason for you doing it. But Australians in particular, I think, have a general hate of politicians, a dislike of politicians. We see them as like real estate agents, as lawyers, bullshit artists, right? That they speak out of both sides of their mouths. They're lying all the time. They're untrustworthy. And so if you are closely associated with a political party, our assumption is going to be that you're either like a goody two-shoes, you want to be involved in rulemaking, or you want to make money by lying. You know, it's that kind of negative association with it. So I think our culture would probably have the reverse attitude. If you were associated with these parties, we would just think, what a wanker. Why did you join the Liberal Party? What?
Many Chinese don't even show respect to their fellow countrymen, let alone respect the customs and rules of other countries when traveling abroad. I can imagine their excuse and attitude. Cut in line? I'm in a hurry. Speak loud? I'm a loud person.
Oh my God, this is... This is a good one. This blows my mind. Chinese people, you guys are going to have to explain to me what the deal is. So my family and I went to Phillip Island recently and we went to see the penguins, right? So the penguin parade there, these are the fairy penguins. They come up on the beach at night. You got to be really quiet. And this was one of those really interesting cultural things where there were loads of Chinese people and Indian people there. Obviously, we have huge numbers of people traveling in Australia from these countries and we want to serve them. But it was just such an interesting thing, this clash of cultures where the Indian people and Chinese people were constantly talking really loud, even when the person that was, say, narrating or telling the story about the penguins was talking and trying to talk. They had to keep telling them to be quiet and to, you know, listen, and it was time to be quiet. And I don't know if this was a language barrier thing or a cultural thing, you know, perhaps they didn't speak English and they were like, we don't know. Anyway, the really interesting thing was I went and sat down on one of the seats, right? And I put my stuff down, my bags down, my kids, my family was still coming. And I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old child. My sister and her small family were there. She's got kids around the same age. And my parents were there as well. So we're all like walking into this bench to sit down because it's kind of like a stadium. And this Chinese woman with what I imagine were her parents and some friends literally just like pushed in front of us and just shoved their things down as quickly as possible where we were. I was sitting down already and she just planted stuff on either side of me and just gave me this like angry look. And I remember just looking around like, my children are standing right next to you. My family, we're already here. Like, this is our spot, mate. What the hell's the deal? And she didn't say anything to me. She just gave me this look and was telling all that, like we weren't even there, was telling all of her family and friends, just sit down here. Just sit down here where these people are. Just take these seats quickly. They haven't completely consolidated this area. And I just looked at the old gentleman that was there and he was just like, he looked back at her and was just like, don't do it. Like saying, don't do that, come back. But I remember just thinking, who behaves that way? That's so weird to be like, you know, a young family is sitting down somewhere and we're just going to push in as fast as we can because it's a better spot, even though we got there second. And you guys will have to explain to me what the deal is with that. Is it that the population in China is so big that you have to kind of be really pushy when it comes to these things, or you just don't get what you want? Because yeah, it happens in Australia, but it is seen as one of those like massive faux pas where you would never behave that way with other people because you would get shamed. You get shamed publicly. People would be like, what are you doing, you dickhead? These people already had this spot. Get out of here. Find somewhere else to sit, you moron.
Damaged cultural landmarks. Well, not ours. Not flushing the toilet. I forgot. Route to service stuff. They kept me waiting for too long. 10 minutes. From my experience with Chinese people, including my family and relatives, I know how difficult it is to improve basic social manners. For example, my mom, she once went to a neighbor's house, said condescendingly, the air is so stuffy. Have you ever opened the window? At my cousin's house, she asked, when was the last time you dusted your TV stand? 10 years ago? At home, she was constantly mad at my dad. I'm sick of your ugly face.
Oh my God.
She complained about my cooking and housekeeping skills at my house.
This is one of those things that I have heard about. I don't think this is uniquely Chinese. And I'm sure, again, as a caveat, I'm sure there are Australian mums and nanas that are like this. My nana would probably be a little more like this. My mum definitely wouldn't be. But it's this attitude of like telling other people about all the things they're doing wrong, I guess, all the time. And one thing, I had a lesson earlier today with one of my friends, one of my students from Hong Kong. And I was talking to her about this video. We were having a chat and she was she was laughing when I mentioned it. And she's like, as soon as I came back to Hong Kong, because she'd been living in Australia, and she's like, as soon as I got home, my mum was like, why are you so tanned? You look very black. You got fat. Your butt is too fat. And there was a third thing that she mentioned. Yeah, it was just like picking on her. I'm like, that is just so brutal, dude. Where does that come? Like, is that a place of love? Is she thinking I need to criticize these things so that she changes these things for her own good? Is she just being nasty? Is this just a cultural thing where she just doesn't think it's going to be, you know, a kind of negative way of talking to someone? And I said to her, I'm like, my parents would never, ever say that kind of thing to me direct. If they were concerned, tan-wise, they would never mention that. You look too pale, you look too dark. They would never care about my appearance like that. If I was really overweight, they might be like, what's going on? You know, are you being healthy? Because they'd be concerned about my health, but they would never just say, you've got a really fat butt. And she was just like, no, they do it here. They do it here. So that's one of those things that culturally has always blown my mind about how Chinese people can be so blunt with their friends, their family, with other people. And again, I don't know, is it just accepted? Is it something you do as a way of being nasty, or are you doing it as a way of kind of trying to show concern, but you do it in a very blunt manner? You know, again, explain it to me in the comments, because this is a big point of difference.
She doesn't recognize everybody is unique with their own strengths and weaknesses. In schools, Chinese teachers don't teach courtesy, compassion, empathy.
Wow.
Nope. Teachers don't say respect everyone, no matter who they are. No, respect is like VIP seating. It's reserved for straight A students.
Wow. That is the tiger mum thing, I think, about Chinese culture and some other cultures, Indian culture too, I think to some degree. You definitely see that in Australia, where there will be private school students and they have been pushed hard by their parents. They haven't had no social life. They spend all day, every day studying, learning different musical instruments, playing different sports. And if they don't perform, they are castigated by their parents. One example is like my wife, she works in admin at a music school. And when you see there's one family there are, I think, 2 kids in the family, and they kind of rotate between the different musical instruments, and they'll be there for like 3 hours. So they'll be doing piano, then guitar, then drums, or singing or something like that. And sometimes they have to wait between lessons because there's obviously not a teacher available. And I'll see one of the kids doing the Rubik's Cube, playing chess, studying maths, and it's like 7 p.m. at night. And you're just like, do these kids ever get a break? And maybe they love it. Perhaps there's these kids that just absolutely thrive on this stuff. But it is a big cultural thing in Australia where fewer people will be pushing their children like that to perform as a way of showing, say, societal superiority, right? My kids are here. My kids are doing this. My kids are this smart. We have those people here, but quite often I think the average Australian will be just like this guy, this family, like all they ever talk about is how good their children are, how much better they are than us, what school they got into, what they're studying, what job they have, how much money they make. And you would just be like, this is just painful. I don't want to hear about this. Are they good kids? Are they good people? Are they worth talking to? Whereas I think from other cultures like Chinese culture and Indian culture, there seems to be this attitude of what you own and what you've achieved defines you as a person a lot more than if you're a happy person, if you're a good person, if you're a nice person, which is an interesting thing. Perhaps that's a thing in a culture where you have 1.4 billion people in your society. You have to try and get to the top by achieving all these things and being better than everyone else, or else you're just going to get trodden on. So maybe it's just a big cultural difference because I live in a country of only 30 million people, whereas Chinese people have 1.4 billion people in their country.
If your grades are low, you will getting roasted in front of the whole class.
Wow.
And the Chinese education system is not about raising good people, decent human beings. It's about raising straight-A robots.
Wow.
Their big dream isn't, my kid is a kind person. No, it's my kid is going to crush that test and get into Beijing University. What's empathy going to do? Get my son a scholarship? Having lived abroad for many years, I've learned to respect others, to be mindful of their feelings and avoid causing unnecessary trouble. Unfortunately, in China, respect isn't a priority.
It's such a weird thing, right? We are raised in Australia, by and large, to be respectful of others. Treat other people with respect, treat them how you would like to be treated. And you're going to run into problems, I think, pretty quickly if you don't. Bumping into people, being rude to people, assuming you're always in the right. Yeah, it's a very interesting cultural difference between our cultures. Anyway, I thought it would be a bit of fun. I love talking about cultural differences. Let me know what you think. Let me know about your opinions, your cultural differences too. And, you know, tell me about how Australians are the worst people. We're the rudest. We're the most awful when we go abroad. Leave it in a comment below. YouTube reckons you're going to enjoy this video, and I'll see you next time. Tooroo.